Earth-Moon system, and so the exposure to radiation is longer and more intense. A trip to the moon is 2-3 days, and so we don't find ourselves confronted by the threat as much.
What technologies are needed to enable astronauts to survive missions to asteroids and Mars?
If I had the ability to snap my finger and do two things, I would develop much more capable in-space propulsion systems that would cut the travel time, the transit time from Earth to Mars, at least in half and more if possible. And the second thing I would do would be to find some material that can sufficiently shield orbiting or transiting crew members from the threat of radiation without adding untenable weight to the vehicle.
The President's budget request is predicated on the cancellation of the Constellation program. Why is this drastic step proposed?
Sir, there are a number of reasons for the cancellation of the Constellation program, and it has nothing to do with the people in the program who are exceptional engineers, scientists, and researchers. But it has a lot to do with the status of the program. When I became the administrator, we were severely behind schedule and significantly over the amount of money that it would take to complete it. I think by the Augustine Committee's estimate, probably would have taken another $45 to $60 billion to complete it. In order to be able to invest money in research and development that would enable us to get vehicles to put people on the surface of the moon or to transit to Mars, the Constellation program would have pretty much sucked up all of the funds that we could have used for research and development. So for a number of different reasons, it was not the right path for us to take. It was on an unsustainable path.
Well, billions have been invested in Constellation.
Sir,
is that a waste, or are we wasting the billions?
So we invested good money in Constellation, and we have received incredible returns. When I look at some of the technologies that have come out of the Constellation program, and it's everything from just the way we process vehicles or the way we would process vehicles. Some of the technologies like the robotics I mentioned, R2, the dexterous robot, that's a part of the technology demonstration program that was a part of Constellation. A lot of the human research that we do today, actually some of the research that's conducted on the International Space Station comes from expenditures that were a part of the Constellation program, trying to help us find better ways for humans to survive the trips that they were going to have to make. Rovers that are present that we could use today to go to the moon, which have changed my mind about the need for permanent habitats. While not a direct part of the Constellation program when it started, the funding for the rovers and the research actually came out of the exploration system in the Constellation program.
Well, those are some of the benefits coming out of the Constellation
Yes,
program,
sir.
but there are those who are saying that those benefits aside, not going forward with Constellation is a waste, because you're throwing away, perhaps those benefits endure, but you're throwing away a lot of other investments, a lot of other progress. Or is there a waste in going forward, or are both correct?
So as I mentioned before, I wouldn't call it a waste, but I would say going forward with the Constellation program as it exists today, going forward with the program of record, puts us on an unsustainable trajectory considering the economics of today. We would probably not get to the moon with a human until after the 2030s, and I'm convinced that with the technology that we can develop, we'll get there much sooner. We could not go to Mars, probably not in my lifetime, to be quite honest, and I am convinced that given the opportunity to expend some funds on research and development, technology development, we can actually do that.
Well, I'm one that totally subscribes to the idea that President Bush announced a great vision and then didn't fund it, but we are where we are, so why wouldn't we just stretch it out? Keep the investment, stretch out the investment, and not throw away the accomplishments of to date.
Mr. Chairman, I think one of the reasons that Constellation has grown the way it has is because that was the technique used. We stretched out the investments. You made the comment about the cost of the space station program, that it was envisioned to be $8 billion when proposed by the NASA administration under President Bush or President Reagan, and it ended up costing $40 billion plus. What was not said in your statement was that the International Space Station, if I'm not mistaken, is the third or fourth iteration of a space station, and that resulted from stretching the program out and rewickering it, looking for a better way to do it. And I just could not, in good conscience, advise the President that we should follow that same course with the Constellation program. Constellation today, the program of record today, is a lunar-centric program. It has us trying to get Ares 1 that would take us to the International Space Station, take us to low Earth orbit, and then Ares 5 would come somewhere along the road that would be the vehicle that we would use to go beyond low Earth orbit. And Ares 5 would get us to the moon, and it would get us there without a way to get down to the surface of the moon. Altair, the landing vehicle, had not been funded. We were about to do some studies on it, but we had whittled away at the Constellation program and had gotten ourselves in a situation that was essentially unrecoverable.
Well, elaborate on that. Why wouldn't Ares 1, why shouldn't it become the basis for the U.S. astronaut transport to space station?
Well, sir, in my opinion, Ares 1 is a very costly program that keeps us in the same paradigm that we have been since the earliest days of human spaceflight here in the United States, with huge infrastructure, and that's in terms of facilities, people to run those facilities, and we think that we can actually get away from that way of operating by utilizing the commercial entities that already build the vehicles for us and already operate the vehicles for us, as they do in the internet, as they do in shuttle today. My vehicles today are commercial vehicles. Every shuttle is a commercial vehicle built by a commercial vendor that will probably participate in the building of the commercial next generation vehicle. The only difference is the acquisition strategy used to operate that vehicle. And today we buy shuttles, or we bought, at the cost of about $2 billion a copy. In tomorrow's paradigm, I am not going to buy a vehicle, but I'm going to use the vehicle produced by an American corporation in terms of how, what do you call it? My idea is that we lease it, and then we use it to fly a NASA crew to the International Space Station to do a mission. The operation of that vehicle is primarily done, just as it is today, by USA with the Space Shuttle. It will be done by the vendor that owns the vehicle. The Mission Control Center will be done just as it is today, probably, with Shuttle and the International Space Station. The people in the Mission Control Center will be partially those from the company that built the vehicle, and partially from NASA engineers and flight controllers. Again, in my way of thinking, the operational concept, which has not been developed yet, but I will have a large part to play in what it ends up being, in my operational concept, the flight director is still a NASA person. The one NASA person that you can count in being in the control center.
So you're not suggesting that Ares costs any less or any more than developing the technology than doing it commercially. You're suggesting, I think I'm hearing you suggest, that the savings is in the operations. Is that correct?
I'm suggesting that the production...
Do we have a comparable development cost going
so.
commercial versus Ares?
Mr. Chairman, I actually think that development cost, which we pay in part through the amount that we pay for seats, I think the development cost will actually be somewhat less than Ares 1. That is something that it's too early to say, but I do believe that.
What's the basis of that belief?
The basis of the belief is that the technology today,
You're pretty far down the road with Ares.
With Ares?
Yes.
Sir, we have quite a way to go. We just finished the...
Well, a commercial approach doesn't have as far to go or even further?
They have as far to go in one respect, but they're getting ready to actually test fly the vehicle here in next year. In fact, we're going to test fly 2 of those vehicles. Another potential source of commercial is the Atlas V and the Delta IV. And those vehicles have been flying for quite some time. So for cargo